Hello Year 11, here is your second tutor session. Today we're focusing on Language Paper 1, Question 4, that's the critical evaluation one. So first things first, let's just recap the key important information. This question is worth 20 marks, which means you will need to spend longer on this question. And in essence, you need to write a short essay. The essay needs to bring together all of the skills in the reading paper that you've used to this point. So that is your AO1 skills, which is where you retrieve information and show your inference, your AO2 skills, which are your method analysis. You don't need to bring in AO3 because that is the comparison, and you only use that for the comparison question on paper 2. So all of these skills, AO1 plus 2, come together to form AO4, critical evaluation. So what does that actually mean? To be critical, you actually need to have an opinion, which seems quite difficult, especially when or if you don't actually care. So we have to pretend we care about what the writer is doing, about the text we're reading in this language exam, and about the statement that you're given. This skill is very similar to what you're expected to in your literature exams. So for example, where you get a question that you have to argue, like in Macbeth, to what extent is Macbeth seen as an unlikable character? You have to place yourself on a scale of agree to disagree. You have to justify your opinion, why you've put yourself on that scale. And then you always need to link specifically to the methods used by the writer. That is integral. If I go back to the first slide, we've got this little icon here, which might seem a bit weird. But the message behind this image is that you need to seize as many marks as you can. And because it's worth 20, you try and get as many as you can. It also states the what and the how. You have to talk about what the writer is doing and how they are doing it. So just a reminder of what the question looks like again. This is the question from your mock before Christmas, where you read about Zoe and her husband on the mountain and there was a big avalanche. So question 4 says, focus this part of your answer on the second part of the source from lines 28 to the end. Then you get this statement from a student. A student said, in this part of the story where Zoe and Jake are caught in the avalanche, I can't believe Zoe is so slow to react to the warning signs because in the end, the situation sounds really dangerous. So first of all, you've been given a really specific part of the extract to focus on. Your teacher will have told you to draw a box around those lines so you're not tempted to talk about anything else. Then you've got this statement which you need to respond to. The crux of the question is here. To what extent do you agree? And then these bullet points are designed to help you. So in your response, you could consider Zoe's reactions in this part of the story, evaluate how the writer makes the situation sound dangerous, and support your response with references to the text. That seems pretty easy, but the key part there is the evaluation. When you evaluate, you're looking at how successful or how effective the writer has been. And we can't stress enough, we want you to have your own opinion. Now, your teacher probably will have told you that it's the easiest thing to do is to agree with a statement. And I agree, it is. You will find that in the extract, Zoe is slow to react and that the situation sounds really dangerous. However, there will be parts within the text that you can argue against. So maybe she is slow to react because the warning signs weren't obvious to her. They might have been obvious to us as a reader. Or the situation sounds really dangerous, but that's only because we've read the text and there's foreshadowing at play. So if you're thinking about aiming for those top bands, you can be perceptive and you can show that you can argue against what the statement says. But obviously you've got to back it up. So let's take it step by step. Obviously feel free to pause at any points that you can make notes, but there should be time at the end of this video for you to make plenty of notes in your booklet. So because it's worth 20 marks, we are strongly encouraging you to spend some time planning. Now I know a lot of you will say, oh, I don't like to plan, and I get it. However, please plan. To get the top marks, the examiner needs to see that you've put together a coherent, a well-structured argument. You don't want 4 random paragraphs shoved together. You might actually have a couple of agree, one disagree, and you want to put it into a logical order. So planning is the only way to do that. Planning also enables you to make sure that in your head you're really clear about what you're saying and how you're going to say it, that you've got the right evidence to support what you want to say. So a good place to start is to focus on your AO1 skills, which means you simply write down some notes in response to the statement. We would encourage you to annotate the statement, and I'll show you that in a second. Hopefully, because this is revision, you will know this already and it is just reminding you, but there are 2 parts to the statement in the question, and you should ensure you respond to both. So I've highlighted those 2 things here. The first point that you can argue about is the not being able to believe that Zoe is slow to react. The second part is about the situation sounding really dangerous. As I said before, those are the things that you can find a pit hole in. So look for evidence where you can see that Zoe is slow to react, or where she isn't slow to react, or where the situation does sound really dangerous or where it doesn't sound really dangerous. You need to work between your extract and your exam paper. Make notes around the statement of how you feel about it. Think about whether you agree with the statement, whether it's the first part, the second part, or whether you think that any parts of it are wrong, or if you think the statement is too extreme. That is absolutely fine as well. If you're using your evaluation skills and you're being critical, you're looking at those small details. So for example, does the situation sound really dangerous, or does it just sound potentially dangerous? Look for the words that are what we call trigger words. Is Zoe so slow to react, or is she just a little bit slow? To get the highest marks, the examiners want to know that you've actually taken the time to read the statement, to read the question, to read the extract, and find the right evidence. Show us how you feel about it. So, as part of your planning then, your notes will be the basis of your own statements, which will be the topic sentences of your paragraphs. So just as the previous slide showed, you actually have to respond to the statement in your topic sentence. Use the words agree or disagree or partially agree to some extent, so that you're actually being critical and evaluative. It may be that you have more than one response to each of the statements, and that is fine as well. You might be able to look at the statement from different perspectives. So, as we've said before, to be perceptive, you can use that tentative language. You could say, somebody might think that Zoe is slow to react. However, another person might interpret it in this way. The writer might have wanted us to think this, but they also might have wanted us to think this. That is brilliant. It's okay to include a range of views or a balanced argument as long as you explain and justify your ideas. Your answers have to be grounded in well-chosen or judicious evidence. And just a reminder, that silly word judicious means they're well-chosen and perfectly appropriate quotations. So go back to your extract and find the best quotations to support what you want to say. Keep these quotations short by selecting just enough of the text to support your view and no more. If you feel like there is a whole line that exemplifies what you want to say, write that down, but then you must zoom in on certain sections of it. Don't think that you can just explain a whole line of quotation in a sentence or two. You need to zoom in. For the final part of your plan then, so on your extract you should have some notes in the margin that link back to the statement. You've got some underlining or some highlighting. Something I like to do is to number my notes. So I might have number 1 linked to a couple of quotations, and that is in relation to that first statement, and then number 2 for the second part of the statement. It sounds easy and simple, but it works. Make sure you label the methods. That again will help you to support your original statement, but also to make sure that you hit that AO2 part of this whole answer. You have to talk about what the writer is using to create effects. These might be things like parts of speech, such as verbs and adjectives. When we say speech, we don't mean dialogue, we mean parts of sentences, so word types. You can look at structural features such as listing, repetition, look for a cyclical structure that is at play, look for the microstructure of sentences and punctuation, and then also language devices such as similes or personification. Later on in the video, I'm going to show you a knowledge organiser with a whole host of terminology on, and you'll also have a printed copy so you can look to see if you know all of the methods that you could potentially talk about for this question. So draw around those lines. This is particularly shoddy, but by putting a box around the lines, I know that I can't or shouldn't look for the answers anywhere else. And as I've said, label those methods in your margin. So because it's worth 20 marks, you're going to want to spend about 20 minutes on it. So give yourself that good 5 to 7 minutes planning time. If you've planned your answer thoroughly, writing the response shouldn't take as long, or shouldn't take too long, because you know exactly what you're saying. So number 1, include statements that agree or disagree. If you can extend the statement to explain why you think what you do, using the conjunction because, that would help develop your answer even more. Support your statement with a quotation. Ideally, that is embedded, so you put that into the sentence. As I've said before, this should be concise, which means short, and simply prove the statement you have made. Make those AO1 inferences. So from that quotation, what can you learn? What does it show you? What can you infer? Then move from your AO1 style comments, where you're stating the what part of your paragraph, and move into the how and the why, which is the AO2. You're looking at the methods being used by the writer. Be explicit. The writer is using the structure of the text to do this. The writer is using adjectives to describe or to create this image. The writer is using this simile to help me visualise. Be specific. A top tip from the examiners is actually to underline your subject terminology so that you can go back and see whether you've included a technique or not. Just a reminder, when we use the word method, we're talking about any technique that the writer is using. Include those embedded quotations, and then finally, the explanation part is the why part of your what, how, why paragraph. Explain the effect of the method on the reader. What does it make you think, feel, imagine? The reader is you, so talk in the first person. This makes me feel. This makes me imagine. From this, I can see. Link back to that original statement, whether you're agreeing with it or not. So, for example, this does make me think that Zoe was foolish to ignore those signs. Whatever supports your interpretation. So let's just do a quick recap. Start your paragraph, your what, how, why paragraph, with a statement that agrees or disagrees with the statement or the element of the statement, like part of the statement. Include your embedded quotations. Use the word because. So why does that quotation prove your idea? Zoom in on the methods used by the writer and explain what it makes you think, feel, or imagine. You might want to take a pause there and write down some notes before we move on. I wanted just to give you a couple of tips and hints for how to secure grade 7+. In the mark scheme, band 4 of the mark scheme says that you need a range of points with well-chosen judicious quotations. I would suggest that you aim to try and include 6+ quotations that help show the examiner whether you agree or disagree or whatever with that statement. By having multiple pieces of evidence, it shows that you are able to support your answer and to construct a well-supported argument. Aim for at least 3 chronological paragraphs. So you could, for example, look at the beginning, not of the extract, but of the section that they've asked you to look at, the middle and the end. They will have chosen that section of the extract on purpose. So look for what you get to, like what you start with, and then how that develops. It feels a bit like repetition, but state your opinion, add your quotations, add an element of the debate or refer to the debate, and then talk about the method. So for example, as you can see from this 4th box, it says build the debate. So you could use phrases like, this is established when the writer includes this, or this is developed by, or this is most apparent when, this contrasts with, it could be argued that, however, it could also be perceived. So you're using very specific moments in the text to support your answers. You're showing that you understand that this is being constructed by the writer. And you're also using that tentative language to show your interpretation or alternative interpretations. Again, don't forget to include the method. As we said before, you can talk about language or structure. You can also talk about tone and the genre. So if you can spot what kind of genre the text is, include that. If you can talk about tone or mood or atmosphere, that is also a method. The next thing I want to talk to you about or show you is the knowledge organiser that you've been given today. I'm not going to go through every single section because that would be really long and boring. However, I want you to spend a bit of time going through all of this wonderful terminology to check what are you actually confident with and what are you not confident with. An excellent revision strategy is to work out those things. So basically, what are you confident with? Are you okay with first, second and third person narration? Are you okay by talking about different structural features, particularly narrative structure? I think this box is particularly helpful for this question because the mark schemes often use these terms in their indicative content. So rather than just focusing on the language that is being used, try and think about the structure. Actually, don't try. I implore you to think about the structure, the narrative structure. This whole paper is about creating worlds and imaginary worlds. So it's about the construction of a narrative, of a story. So look for how a story is put together. This is where you can really use your literature skills. You know how Dickens has constructed A Christmas Carol, how he's used the structure of the story to develop the characters, to develop his methods and ideas about the themes. And it's exactly the same with the extract you're given. So have a look at this. If there are any terms on here that you don't know, you could make a note of them. Go away and research them. If you still can't work out what they are, ask your English teacher. And don't forget, you can also come along to revision sessions, which are restarting after half term. But we also have a Key Stage 4 support group on Mondays and Thursdays in S6 and S10. So come along, because these are the sorts of things that you could talk to the sixth formers about. So I'm going to let you stop now and make some notes. Hopefully that has been helpful for giving you some tips and things that you can do to make sure that question 4 is as strong as it can be. If you've got any questions, ask your English teacher. Thank you.